So, hello everyone, and welcome to Rex Gloriae. My name is Harry, and today I have the pleasure of having Kuba join me. And I guess let's get straight into it. Thanks for taking the time,
Yeah,
and thanks that it worked out so somewhat spontaneously.
yeah, my pleasure. Hello, everyone.
So, I think a good place to start would be maybe you can just give a brief overview of your channel, and maybe a little bit
Mhm.
about yourself, and then hopefully the conversation kind of just rolls from there.
Sure. So I lead the channel Symbols, Patterns, Hierarchies, and well, obviously, quite obviously, it is obvious from the very first video that I'm a big fan of the Pajot brothers who talk about symbolism. And the way it started is that I had a Polish channel, another one
Hmm.
in Polish, and I was trying to popularize or make it more accessible for a Polish viewer, the things that Jonathan and Matthew are talking about.
Sure.
And like that, I was just one evening I was watching an anime called Paprika. And as I was watching it, suddenly it was like, wow, it's so symbolic. There's like it's totally the things that Jonathan is talking about,
Hmm.
scene by scene. Like there's so many things to get there. And then I also thought, okay, so I see in the Q and A's and everyone else, everywhere else, like on Facebook and on Discord, people are asking Jonathan to do a symbolic interpretation or analysis of this thing and that
Hmm.
thing and some other thing. And there's particularly many people asking about anime because it's it's popular among 20 something year olds
Hmm.
or teenagers on the internet. And I thought, okay, so Jonathan is not really eager to analyze anime.
Hmm.
Well, I had seen a few movies and I know a bit of it, so maybe I could like help him do the stuff
Yeah.
that he's not that he doesn't want to do or he doesn't have the time to do.
There's only
So I thought,
one
okay, so
Jonathan.
well, I'll take care of the garbage that he doesn't want to watch. And watch it instead. Maybe my analyses would somehow help someone see something in
Hmm.
those movies, but
Yeah.
obviously it's not on the same level the way he does them. And
Hmm.
so I thought that okay, I'll leave the serious stuff for him and I'll just do the basic stuff for
Yeah. No, I think
myself.
it's yeah, it's very. I mean, I watched a few of your videos, and I think that it's. Obviously very interested in symbolism as well, and they're quite insightful. And what I was surprised about is the animes you watch, are they Japanese created, or are they Western?
So they are Japanese, but it's
Okay.
it's not like it used to be in, let's say, the 80s or before that.
Hmm.
Everything is so globalized right now that even the so the biggest creators like Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli,
Hmm.
he is very much influenced by Disney and Western animation,
Okay.
and he was a big fan of it. So it's so in a way so on the one hand it is Japanese and originated in Japan, so it is different from Western, but it's also heavily influenced
Hmm.
usually.
The reason I
And there's
asked.
even Christian symbolism. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so that's the reason I asked, is that it was surprising that in another sort of, I mean, yeah, like you're saying, maybe it's not so isolated anymore, but in another culture, you're having sort of similar symbolism appear, because I guess Jonathan doesn't talk much about sort of Asian or Japanese symbolism, and so that was quite interesting
Hmm.
that these themes appear, as they should,
Yeah,
if they're
yeah,
truly
yeah, yeah.
symbolic, they should appear across all cultures. Um,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and so for me as well, I think movies is a very good way to let's say apply the symbolism or see how these patterns sort of arise and manifest themselves. Because I think it's one thing to learn about symbolism. You read the Peugeot's books, or I mean, there's other sources as well. But then my question is always, okay, so what do you sort of do with that information?
Hmm.
It's like you can read about
Hmm.
basketball, all you want, but it's not the same as sort of playing it. And when you play, you usually learn something. You're like, oh, okay, that thing that person was talking about, now I know what it is. And so I think when you sort of live in the symbolism, when you try to apply it in your life, or I think looking at movies is a good way to sort of practice that. So you start to see the symbolism. I had similar experiences that you had with movies that I've been watching. So in what way do you think, besides interpreting stories, even creating stories, you can use symbolism there. In what ways can symbolism kind of come into daily life?
So the thing is that I don't think that symbolism is something that we learn and apply like a type of knowledge or like a method. It's more something like discovering it, because we live symbolically, we think symbolically, and we act symbolically, and we understand symbolism, but we usually cannot like speak it out. We cannot talk about it because we just don't have the language for it. But I would compare it to like driving a car. That you can drive a car, but you don't need to know about the mechanics in the car, and also you can go and pray in the church, and you can attend a mass without a profound knowledge of how to deal with sola scriptura or filioque or stuff like that. You don't need theological knowledge. The moment you need those things is when they break down. When your car breaks down,
Yeah,
it would be good to know something about the mechanics in it.
sure.
And it's the same in the church when like something stops working, or you're faced with an issue that you don't know how to resolve.
Yeah.
You'd
So
better know the stuff so that you like can resolve that issue.
yeah.
So the thing about symbolism is similar. I'd say that it is like the underbelly of the world, let's say, or the hidden reality or the hidden meaning of what's going on in the world. And it's all fine to not be able to explicate it,
Yeah.
to say it precisely when everything is like together in your life and everything works. But when you see a breakdown in the world, it might be good to start noticing that we live by symbols, and we don't live in a scientific reality as in scientific papers, let's say, or publications.
Yeah.
That we don't live in the material world, we live in the symbolic world,
Yeah.
and this is where we operate.
Yeah, that's a very, I think it's a really good way to put it. I was thinking the other day about sort of this idea of about discovering symbolism, and then on the one hand you understand the concepts in a sort of mentally you can just see, okay, the tree is a connection, heaven and earth, and so forth. But we're not brains floating in a glass jar. We're ensouled bodies, and so our bodily experience and our interaction with the world, I think, plays a huge role in why these symbols came around in the first place. You can imagine in prehistoric times, people climbed trees way more often, or climbed mountains out of necessity. For example, we need to find where the closest water source is, so I need to climb this mountain to have a look. And so when you arrive at the top, you see, that's where it is. So you've actually gained some very valuable information by climbing the mountain. And back then, I guess there were no hiking paths. It was a difficult journey, and maybe you lost some people on the way, and so you made this arduous journey to the top, and then you got some insights. And so we don't do that anymore. I sit at a desk, I sit in my car in a comfortable environment. And so I think, so when somebody who's gone through those experiences, you tell them, look, the mountain is a symbol for getting, there's knowledge on the top, there's the principle. For them, they've lived it. They're like, yeah, of course, like it's just part of their lived experience. Same with water, for example. Like, if you if you're in swimming and you're I mean, I'm not a good swimmer, so I know what it feels like to lose your footing and to get that sort of moment of fear. And so when somebody tells you water is the symbol of chaos, you connect with it much more. And so yeah, I don't know what your thoughts about that is. It's sort of like the connection between what we're physically doing and these symbols.
Mm-hmm. So the thing is uh, that what we have in the Bible, for example, or what we have in Matthew's book is, of course, it's the mountain, it's a tree, stuff like that, but it's all very concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we don't necessarily live in this natural world, let's say,
Mm.
doesn't take away from the symbolism or the symbolic way of living. That is, um, so you come. It is also a hierarchy. It is also a mountain in a way that you come from the very concrete examples, and then you abstract and abstract and abstract the pattern until you have just the pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you discover that you are also a tree. Uh, 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 you as a human being connect the heaven and earth, right? And then you can abstract that the symbol, the tree, the human being, like it is all the same.
Mm-hmm.
It all reveals the same pattern. Now the most profound question that we have and that we ask the world about is how to live, right? You come to this world and you ask how to act, how to
Mm-hmm.
live. This is why the science this is why science doesn't work, because it's like a sea of facts, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't tell you how to proceed
Yeah.
in that realm of facts. While symbolism is like sacraments in the Catholic Church or in the Orthodox Church. You have sacraments, which are the material, um, the visible sign of an invisible grace,
Mm-hmm.
and symbolism is like the meeting of the meaning and the concrete. And at one point, you can give examples of the concrete as tree or mountain
Mm-hmm.
or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but you can find it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It should be available everywhere.
Yeah.
It might be harder with as we live less and less in the material world, and we spend our days on the internet, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So it might be harder,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that like symbolism would not be present online.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I get your point. I guess what you're saying is you don't need the tree. It's just that was the symbol used in those times
but
because of
but it's
those reasons.
definitely a way to teach it.
You mentioned you look at movies, and so for me, what's kind of also fascinating is the fact that no matter on which side of for example, the political aisle you are, or whether you're religious, atheist, or whatever, movies play a huge role in the culture. You can talk to anybody, and it seems that movies are just, yeah, they're very prevalent. People also get very attached to movies. You have whole communities surrounding movies and series of movies. Um, and I've seen even, for example, you analyze movies. Jonathan Majot does the same thing. There's a lot of meaning to be taken from those. So, what's your idea on why movies are such a sort of prevalent part of culture?
But it what is important here is that these movies are, because you have like artistic movies that are really profound and slow paced and that make you think a lot
Mm-hmm.
and are hard to understand, but these movies are not popular and they are
Mm-hmm.
not as prevalent as the type of movies that you're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So my idea is that we just want stories, because stories are where the meaning for how to live is contained. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we are so story oriented, because we consider our lives a story,
Yeah.
and we look for stories that will show us how to act. And I think that movies are just easily consumable.
Mm.
Like this is the easiest way to find a story around.
Yeah, I
Because
guess. Yeah.
reading a book is also like a book can really get you in,
Mm.
right? You can really suspend all the disbelief around, and you can really suspend all your senses when you get into a book.
Sure.
But it takes time and it takes some effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
While movies are pretty much effortless, and
Yeah.
on both sides actually, because they are easy to consume, but in a way they are also easy to write, to be written, um,
Mm-hmm.
because you cannot write a book that consists mostly of explosions and flashy scenes, right? There has to be some plot.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there are movies where there's barely any plot, there's barely any
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's interesting
it does
because
take it.
those movies,
Yeah.
sorry, those movies are also quite popular. So the idea that that people, um, well, I guess yeah. Then there's the discussion about do popular movies, is it the story that people want, or is it sort of just flashing lights and you know just the just to pass the time, essentially to be entertained by
Yeah.
something going on, shiny object.
Yeah. So that's the question. Are people being fooled? Because they come looking for a story, for example, and all they get is explosions, right? So
Yeah. Or they get a woke remake. So
or a woke
just
remake, yeah.
yeah, just touching on so we had a short discussion earlier about this. So one of your videos you made, which I found very interesting. So maybe you can just briefly summarize your thesis in that video.
Yeah. So what I found out, but I don't think it's my original idea, but people started noticing that
Mm-hmm.
that there is some kind of an alliance of sorts between the movie creators and the critics, let's say the YouTube critics,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where the creators try to make a movie as outrageous as possible, and then the commenters, the critics will just, well, they will just follow and get outraged, and then in
Yeah.
this way they will gather people around them who
Mm-hmm.
are outraged the same way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
So I
it's a
think
win-win for everyone, but it's a big loss for the viewers, right?
yeah, true. At least they're engaged
Yeah.
in some way. Yeah. So I mean, I think even just going maybe a step back and the idea that the movies are made, these, for the lack of a better word, woke remakes are made on purpose. Let's say so. Let's say take Ghostbusters for example, where they
Hmm.
just did the
Hmm.
so one idea, one topic is okay. They're doing this on purpose, which I'm I think maybe it's both. I don't think it's purely every single one is made on purpose. I think maybe they have an idea that, okay, look, we want to increase representation, XYZ. But it also happens every time we do this, we get like a lot of attention in the media and stuff. So maybe it's an unconscious kind of, they gravitate towards these kind of remakes. Um, the other the other point was, um,
I'd like to
it
go
seems to
deeper
me,
on that point, but we'll get back to
okay,
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, continue.
So and on the other hand, it seems that most of these remakes seem to be like a swap of the sexes. So
Hmm.
you essentially just take the male character and you swap a female body in. You don't
Hmm.
change the character to act in a more feminine way. You
Hmm.
just say, look, we're gonna take Jack Sparrow and we're just gonna put the female character there. We're gonna take Captain America and just do the thing. And then you have your strong female character. So I think that's another topic that interests me quite a bit, because I think there are ways to portray the feminine, a strong female character in a feminine way, rather than what we're seeing happening across every single. I mean, I think the next James Bond is also swapped, and it's not a surprise anymore. It's also very very predictive.
Hmm.
Take
Hmm.
any Terminator will come out and they'll make it, and
Sure.
so.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can go back to the point about unconsciously gravitating
Oh yeah.
towards the woke remake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm, so that's the problem of the conspiracy theories, right? Like
Mhm.
why would anyone make movies that are like that? What's the agenda, and who has
Mhm.
this agenda, and why this person or group of people would have that agenda? What is their point, and
Yeah.
what do they want to achieve? Even if it's like far-fetched depopulation, why would they want this depopulation? Like, you need
Mhm.
reasons for those things, right?
Yeah.
And this is where you stumble upon the problem of higher beings than humans, because
Mhm.
when you stop at the human level, you have just you would need a person, or you would need a group of people, but it's
Mhm.
not obvious if it's a group of people, if it's a studio, which is its own being, or if it's
Mhm.
like all of Hollywood, which is its own being, a group of studios. Like
Yeah.
in the hierarchy of of beings, you have beings higher, and wills and consciousnesses higher
Mhm.
than those of just humans. And it seems that there is a consciousness, or there is a will that wants this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And and I wouldn't think that there is a person that goes to work in the morning, does something on the movie set, and then goes back home and goes to bed with the agenda in their mind that, okay, I'm
Mhm.
changing the world into something more woke. Everyone is a pawn in this game.
Mhm.
There's like a higher, there seems to be, at least it looks that there's a higher
Mhm.
will that
Mhm.
turns us into those pawns of it,
Yeah.
and just makes us operate and fulfill those its will, basically. And then um gosh, I lost a thought here. I had it. Yeah, so yeah. So then how are those um scripts written, those woke scripts, right? Well, they are written basically, uh you could say today that using AI, but it's far fetched. Like, of course, they are not written purely by AI, but but there are certain points that need to be made, or need to be met, because it's been researched that this demographic likes this. You need this to satisfy this demographic. Like, it's
Mhm.
statistical data. So it's
Yeah.
the scripts are written basing on certain statistical data that wasn't achievable before the technology allowed this,
Mhm.
to have like
Mhm.
massive checks of what people like, and how people act when they see this or
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So you could say that the scripts are written by this machine, by this Moloch,
Mhm. Mhm.
that gathered all that data and found out
Yeah.
that negative emotions sell best, and um, they trigger biggest responses, and etc. etc.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that it's based on, let's say, data on what people like, but I think you mentioned it at the end. It's about what people engage with.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not necessarily what they like.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, 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 yeah.
as
That
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that
So,
was a
uh,
mistake. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
What
yeah.
gives the
So,
most response? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I mean,
What makes you the most money, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think you see that with Facebook promoting, um, uh, content that causes this outrage, clickbait sort of thing. But I sort of never made that connection that clickbait is the same on the
Mhm.
same sort of level as these movies that are coming out. Um, yeah, so
Yeah, and
that's
when you see an interview with like Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, with
mhm,
Joe Rogan, or it's similar, I think, with Zuckerberg, that they're not the masterminds behind what is going on with their creations, or
mhm,
with what they are heads of.
yeah,
They're also just, you can see that they're also just pawns, and they don't really understand, and they don't really follow all that. It's the
yeah,
machine that came up with this this algorithm, the statistics,
Mhm.
it's,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
the machine
sure.
that creates that.
Yeah, the machine or the sort of the higher order
Yeah.
principle, you can say.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's if you don't have that worldview, you know, you're materialist, then you need to pin somebody needs to be on the
yeah,
your level of yeah, your buck stops at the highest level, and that's Zuckerberg or that's Soros, or you know,
yeah.
pick your
Villain.
bad guy of the bad guy of the year. You know, it's gonna rotate. Um, and so I think also in the Bible you obviously have allusions to this when Saint Paul says, you know, our battle is with the principalities, not with flesh and blood, because the flesh and blood will keep changing.
Yeah,
Zuckerberg will be replaced by whoever, and
exactly.
it's an
And the
endless cycle.
principality stays. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so you can't deal with it on this level. You could temporarily, you could get him out of office, or you could do whatever, but it's just gonna somebody else will take his place, and the whole cycle starts again in some
Mhm.
sense. Um, and so yeah, to the second point about the type of this let's say this remake, it seems to just be about swapping the male female,
Yeah.
because I don't really see any other way. There are other attempts at, you know, falling in this sort of woke ideology, but that seems to be the most prevalent
Mhm.
um, kind of mixing that's going on. And I mean, it can happen on a very sort of superficial level, like Ghostbusters, or I'm sure you've seen the video from Peugeot about Moana, which
Mhm.
happens at a kind of a more mythical level where people might not even realize, hey, look, that's what's going on. Whereas the Ghostbusters is very obvious. It's a
Yeah.
cheap way to just flip and let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's more the rage kind of side, but the it seems to me the Moana um, type of getting really into the symbolism, because it seems either consciously or not, they understand some of that symbolism, like
Mhm.
placing the shell on top of the pillar
Mhm.
and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
So my theory here is that we have we all have a sense, like a symbolic sensibility or sensitiveness to symbolism, but we don't
Mhm.
know, if we don't know the it explicitly, we don't know what to do and how to actualize it. And what we can sense in a way is that the feminine
Sorry.
that the feminine is kind of disappearing from the world, or it's shrinking, because
Mm-hmm.
the feminine is also the private, it's also the hidden, it's also
Mm-hmm.
the unknown, the, well, veiled, let's say, while the masculine is also what is public, what is overt, what is known, etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
And just as science progresses and we know more and more about the world, we have fewer and fewer mysteries about the world, and everything seems to be so countable, right? We have it all in the Excel sheets,
Mm-hmm.
and then everything we do is overt in a way. Um, our talk right now, our chat
Yeah.
will be online for people to see, so it's
Mm-hmm.
public, right?
Yes.
Everything you do is public because there's CCTV everywhere, and yeah, and you can see that there's also like this disdain for the feminine. The feminists hate the feminine. They
Mm-hmm.
hate
Mm-hmm.
being women, for example, and they
Yeah.
want to be
Men.
overt,
Yeah.
explicit like men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's dislike, at least a dislike for what's feminine, for what's private, for what's caring, etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
And we feel it. We feel that there is something lacking in the world, and this is the feminine aspect that is going away, and it's the chaotic aspect that is going away, and this wave of chaos is just building up somewhere, and it will
Mm-hmm.
flush everything again, like in the flood.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to get this feminine aspect into the world again a little bit, but we just don't understand how it works. We don't understand what the feminine is. So we
Mm-hmm.
think that if we just make Ghostbusters women, then we're bringing the feminine in, while doing totally the opposite, like playing
Yeah, exactly.
playing ourselves, because what we do is we deprave those women of their femininity and we make them men, because only what's masculine is worthy of anything.
Yeah.
Only the
Seems
masculine
to,
values
yeah.
are good values, and whatever's feminine is just crap, right?
Yeah, and I mean, so it's interesting. You see this it right in Genesis when there's the dichotomy set between the serpent and the woman. Maybe that's something that's playing out, in the sense that there's this sort of you ask, like you're saying, why the woke remake? Is it, and so why is this sort of disdain there? I mean, you see it with motherhood. Like my wife, she took maternity leave. She's at home with the kids, but you can sort of feel it, when you go to parties and stuff, and you say, oh, like, all the women, they're working, and then if my wife says, look, it's been 2 years I've been at home, and they're like, okay, so, like, what do you do? Or there's sort of and raising kids and being a mother is, for me, like the vocation. And so there is definitely this you can feel it in the culture, sort of this anti, yeah, anti feminine,
Yeah.
not anti feminist, but yeah, anti feminine.
Yeah, and it also touches upon men, because when you think that your center is not at home, but it is at work, for example, and you identify yourself, let's say, as an architect or as a photographer or as a, I don't know, surgeon, whatever. Everything else, this is your center, and everything else is a periphery to that. While our Christian life tells us, and also like our humanity tells us, that there's more important stuff than your photography, than your work, than your whatever it is that you do. Like, you earn money for something, and no,
Yeah.
not the other way around, right? So you earn
Yeah,
money
I think
for your family. Your family is your center.
exactly. I think so. Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the Bible, things go wrong when there's a disorder in the worship, right? In the praise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think we see that in our lives too. You can make work your center, but then your family will suffer because of that. Because we have to make decisions. We live in time, and we have X energy, and X seconds in the day. So each time when you focus on your work, you're in some ways neglecting your family. When you focus on your family, you're neglecting your work. But that's fine, because that's the order of how things should be.
That's the
God
hierarchy.
at the
Yeah.
top, then family, then, let's say, work, then hobbies. And what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of times hobbies and entertainment kind of, or maybe, yeah, hobbies like photography will take the top spot. But and that's fine short term as a distraction, but it's not going to fulfill you. It's not going to, when things go wrong, when your kids are sick, or when you come down with some illness, your photography club is not gonna, or your photography is not gonna help you so much. And so I think it's also maybe because we live in such a comfortable world, we live so isolated and kind of buffered, you can live a life where your
that is
hierarchy,
possible. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that is possible. Whereas I think in pre-modern times, you just couldn't do that, because one, you were constantly faced with dangers. And so that would be as a reminder that you're spending way too much time carving your wood figures, because there's actual things going on, and you need to sort of reorient. And so I think that's also leading to these sort of extreme, or this devotions people have to comics or whatever, because you're living in a bubble where everything is safe, and you can do that. But even then, you're not finding your full potential. I think another issue that we have is people really settle because they don't know what the Christian story calls you to be. I mean, the vision of man of who we are, if you look in the Bible, is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, as being a convert, recently, about 5 years ago, I really, that was one of the things that just continues to amaze me, is that what the potential is, or what we are called to be, is just beyond anything that's um, given to us by the secular culture, which says, oh yeah, I mean, if you're atheist materialist, it's just chance, basically. You're just here because why? Probability, time, and after you're dead, okay, you're gone. So
Yeah.
make the most of it, I guess. Like, it's not a very it's
What
actually
does
a
the
very
most mean, right? You need an orientation of sorts to even understand what the most means. You
yeah,
can be
exactly.
hedonistic, and then you,
Yeah,
at least you
yeah. It
know.
leads it leads to the sort of hedonism, because
Mm-hmm.
that's all there is. Then your sense, your senses, pleasure. Maybe you can have some sort of humanism, and you can say I aspire for knowledge and stuff, but yeah, that also leads down some dark
So,
can lead to
I
some
mean,
dark paths
it's
as
really
well.
hard to debate or argue, because we just come from so different places. Like if someone says that their aim is those humanist values and knowledge of sorts, like what for? Like what do you base that on, and why would you need that for anything?
Mm,
These are questions that cannot be answered without a higher purpose. Coming back to
true.
those female characters,
Hmm.
because you said that it's possible to portray a strong female character. I wonder what your idea for a strong female character is.
Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't really use that term, because it's a very, you
Okay,
know
so for a female
cliche, let's say.
character, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. So, or how can I say it? So we said that, look, the way that most of these movies, let's focus just on movies for now, are doing it, is not the right way, you can say. Or they're sort of just transplanting
Hmm.
a woman's body on the masculine.
Hmm.
And so then my idea is more like, okay, if that's not the right way, towards something which is sort of more in line with traditionally and symbolically what the feminine represents, right? I just put up a review of the movie The Town, which is a heist movie.
Hmm.
But surprisingly, it was interesting because the female character, they have two female characters. One is the guy's ex, and one is this love interest who he meets during the movie. The ex is presented, she's very sexualized. She's like doing drugs, and she's literally his ex, so it's his past life. And then he meets this new woman who ultimately causes him to leave the criminal world. So she causes a change in him. So for me, power means you can change things, right? You either do it with a baseball bat, you do
Hmm.
it with threat, a masculine, let's say, way. I mean, there's other ways, but you
Hmm.
can do it. You can do it through force. You do it my way, or else. Um, you can do it through coercion. You can do it through, like his ex was trying to do it through lower desires, lust. I can cause a change in this person. But his love interest in the movie is, if you look at it, she doesn't really do much. She arises on the scene, and it's more her witness and her openness to him, and her righteous way of being, and obviously his attraction to her. Um, and she's humble in that movie, and and ultimately in the climax of the movie, she finds out that he's a criminal, and then she essentially forgives that. So
Hmm.
there's a confession scene, and she transcends that, and she could have said, I'm out, but she forgives him, and that forgiveness transforms him. um and so for me, that was a good way to represent a female character that's doing it in a sort of soft, gentle way, but bringing about a quite a major change, like in the
Hmm.
character, right? So that's for me, that's the power aspect of it.
Hmm. Hmm. So I think this is exactly right. What you said is that um, she didn't it, she didn't do much in the movie,
Mm,
because one of the other aspects of the masculine feminine dichotomy is being active and being passive, which poses a problem when you want to make a movie that centers around a female protagonist, because the feminine is, well, is passivity as well, is receptiveness, while the masculine is active. So if you want to make it work symbolically, you shouldn't be able to see the acting, the acts of the feminine, or so the
Mm-hmm.
of the female hero.
Interesting.
Now, I mean, that's just my idea, right? And so a movie can be centered around a female character, just as the Legend of Zelda is centered around the princess, and she's in the title Zelda, right? But she's just there, and Link is the protagonist, right? The guy. I mean, the protagonist. He's the main actor of it. But nothing of that would happen if it wasn't for her. So she is the
Mm-hmm.
center here, right? She's the female is the center, but she's also always in the background. She's not the active one. So
Mm.
there are movie plots where the woman is kind of the reason for everything, like Troy, for example, but she is not the one fighting in in the she's not in the scenes, she's not in the shots,
Yeah.
and she's not being active, because, well, the feminine is connected to passivity. And but you can play around with that idea. And I always like to give the example of the Terminator 2,
Mm-hmm.
where Sarah Connor is in a way a masculine character, because she's so tough, and she does the acting, she is the
Mm-hmm.
actor, but also, like, she does that because of being a mother. Like, she does it because she is a mother. So she does all that because of her feminine side, and because that feminine side has a say in all that, and is the
Mm-hmm.
reason for why everything else is happening, why she's protecting, why she's
Mm-hmm.
shooting, why she's exercising and making her body tough, because
Yeah.
because of her feminine aspect, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So she's a character where the masculine and the feminine are uh, kind of combined, because she becomes masculine because of her feminine. She does
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
acting because of her femininity, because the
Yeah.
feminine is the reason why the masculine acts, right?
Mm. That's very interesting. And it just reminds me of Alien as well, of Ripley's character,
Mm-hmm.
because um, I don't know if it's in the first movie, but definitely in the second one, there is this. It's set up that she finds the girl, the
Mm-hmm.
little girl, and then she acts as the mother figure, and then, like you're saying, everything that conspires is centered around her saving her daughter, you can say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So and she's also tough and doing the shooting, um and so, because usually, yeah, Aliens is brought up as a good way to do the feminine character, or the right way. Usually when people say, oh, we don't dislike main protagonists, female protagonists in Ghostbusters, because I like Alien. But I'm not also so sure that the Alien is the proper way to do
Sure.
it, because she's the main character in Alien. I can't. It's one of my favorite movies. I should know this, but I don't know if in the first movie there's a
I
setup.
I think that Winona Ryder was in the first one. The She was a cyborg, right? I think that was the first one,
Uh,
where she
okay,
found where Ripley found her. Like, she was one of the crew. Yeah, I
okay.
think.
I, I
I'm
I
I'm
thought
not
I was
sure
under the
either. Okay.
impression it's the second one. Yeah,
Yeah, or maybe that's the second one.
but
Okay.
anyway, that's yeah.
So,
So
but that's an interesting point, because this is the thing, that we are not dealing with male and female characters. We are dealing with the masculine and feminine symbolism, right? And this is what doesn't work with movies like Ghostbusters, Like you don't have the masculine meeting the feminine. You have it in Alien, and you have it in the Terminator, and even within a single character, and it's fine because you see how the feminine evokes action in the masculine, and it can happen between different people, and it can happen within one person, but it's the meeting of the two, right? And you have none of that in Ghostbusters. It just it breaks
it's a
apart, right?
superficial like lazy way to do it, and that makes me think there was more of the AI written script or decision. So I guess, like you mentioned, you gave the idea, the example of Troy, and you said Helena of Troy was the driving force, but she wasn't the one who was doing the fighting. Therefore, she wasn't the one who got the screen time, right? So it seems to me that we place a lot of value on the active part. You mentioned passive active. Does that mean that to have that maybe in a book where you can have more sort of exposition, or you can have inner monologues of characters, and that it's easier to portray feminine the feminine side than it is in a blockbuster, where it's like you need that action and active part to come through.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposition, and I think there is some truth to it. You had Jane Austen, that was so immensely popular. It's hard to adapt those books by her, or the, what are they called, the Jane era authors. I forgot the name of the sisters who also wrote books like that. Like it's hard to hard to adapt those books because they are so much focused on the inner life, the secret inner life of the main character, that showing it on screen where you need action because it's a picture, it's a moving picture, so you need movement there. It's hard. I remember my wife took me to Jane Eyre, to the cinema, the movie theater, and I slept through it. Really, I was really tired after work then, but it was years ago. And I just, I woke up at the end credits because there was something moving, right? But I watched it years later. It's a very good movie, but
Sorry, which movie was it again?
It's called Jane Eyre, Eyre.
Okay,
Bronte sisters, by
all right.
Bronte, one of the Bronte sisters.
Okay.
Wrote the book. So so I think there is something to it that it's easier to portray femininity, proper femininity in books where you have more options to get into, to see behind the veil that hides the inner life. While the masculine aspect is more about the external life, so whatever's going on the outside. And it's
true.
easier to portray that in a movie because you need moving. It's called a movie, for a reason.
Exactly. Okay.
So are movies doomed to have masculine protagonists? Well, I don't know, but it's definitely easier to have them work properly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it lends itself towards that. That's why most 80% are probably like that. And maybe that's also the reason that the body swap is so prevalent, because it's easy, and I think it's difficult given the medium, given that there needs to be things happening on screen. So maybe you need really good cinematography, maybe you need something while the monologue is playing, or I think it's more challenging. That's why it's easier to just do the swap, say done, tick the box, let's go. And it gets and since we've upset the fan base, we're gonna get some
we'll make billions.
Exactly.
That's how it works. I wonder, it's again the question of awareness. So awareness of being a gear in a meticulous machinery. I wonder about the awareness of those YouTube reviewers, of those YouTube personalities who just make all of their career on Outrage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was also I think that's also a very interesting point, because on the one hand I think it's maybe a genuine fan of The Witcher or of whatever, who's upset that they've done this to their beloved series, and he's going to make a 3-hour video and rip apart um the movie or the series in question. um but yeah, so I think what your insights showed to me is, okay, they do that, and the next video they make is maybe a very positive video about something where they're just saying, look, I really like The Witcher, and they'll find that the one with the rant is
Yeah,
getting much higher views, and so
yeah,
they skew themselves towards that kind of content as well. So it's kind of like um yeah, sort of subconscious, or maybe some are doing it on purpose, some are actively, they know, that's what the data shows, so
yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna just continue to make these kind of
But again,
videos.
it's the data that makes the decision, right? Kind of. It's
Mm,
the machine again, the Moloch, because it's the data that makes you take this particular decision, takes away
mm.
your free will.
Yeah, fair, that's a good way to put it. I finally got around to reading 1984, and there's an interesting aspect in that movie, in that book, sorry. And what happens is he introduces this concept of 2-minute hate, and that's basically the characters are, they go around their day, and then there's a signal, and then everybody has to look at the screen, which are everywhere, they're prevalent, these telescreens, and then they play the image of the enemy, right? The opponent, the leader of the enemy forces, and everybody lets out like visceral hate at this character, and so they're binding together around this hate. And I mean, it's it's a very disturbing vision, I mean, it's, when I read that I was like, whoa, how can you even think of this? Like, it's such an inwarded society, that's centered around hate rather than, I mean, from the Christian tradition, I guess other traditions too, you you want to center around love. So it's really a inversion. But then I thought, after watching your video too, that wait a minute, like, if what's driving all these videos, these movies, is a sort of outrage, so isn't that also binding people together? Like, aren't we getting like, yeah, you get a lot of views on YouTube, you get people commenting, and the thing that they're revolving around, it's not a love for the thing, it's a hate for the thing. And so I
Mhm.
was like, there is some insights there with this 2-minute hate, um, and the connection that has to sort of the polarization we experience in the real world. I mean, polarization usually occurs more about the hate of the
Yeah,
person with the opposing view.
political
You
opponent.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, or rather than the love for your own,
Hmm.
maybe a mix of the two.
Hmm.
And sort of this visceral kind of outrage.
So I don't have a clear idea here of how it works with this love and hate,
Mm-hmm.
because love is is what connects, right? And hate, by definition, is what fragments. And when we were talking about this, for example, outraged Star Wars fan community,
Mm-hmm.
what they are connected with might be the love for the original trilogy, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily the hate for the new one. But it also might be the hate for for the new one.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
maybe it's both. Yeah.
I'm not
Um,
sure about this. And also, like, what we notice sometimes is that the when you're centered around hatred, you inevitably experience this fragmentation by not being orthodox enough in your hatred. So if you don't go with the hate all the way down with the hate, uh, then you're excluded as not being hateful enough. And we can see that with the feminist movement and the all the agenda, how it breaks down now with the LGBT the T breaks away from the LGB because like some people were not radical enough uh, to let the concept of a gender or of a biological sex go completely.
Mm.
And you can also see that in the church circles where you have um, different steps or different variants of denying the legibility of the Vatican II, uh,
Mhm.
for example, and you have people who just you have Saint Peter's Brotherhood,
Mhm.
which is like still wants to be under the Pope, but
Mhm.
considers the Latin Mass and the Old Mass as the highest way of having Mass. But then you have different levels of going down with the sedevacantists and other deniers, etc., etc.,
Mhm.
which is the same mechanism operating within the church. And um, what is painful to see a lot of the time is that those groups are actually centered around hate for something rather than
Mhm.
a love, even if it's declared. And it's also like on the other end of the um, let's say the spirituality spectrum of the church. you,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
can also see that
Yeah.
in the people like hating the ritual and just
Yeah.
getting rid of everything that is ritualized.
Mhm.
And and it's also like breaking into different smaller groups who suddenly become kind of ritualized. If you look at some Protestant groups, for example,
Mhm.
they establish um, some kind of tradition and some kind of rites,
Yeah.
rituals, and then so they break out of the stream of people denying any kind of ritualization,
Mhm.
etc., right? And then there are people more radical going like, okay, so we've sung this song for 2 months now, so it's becoming too entrenched in us. We need to come up with a new song because
Something new. Yeah.
yeah, because we need to sing the
Yeah.
new song, right? So
Mhm.
you see that on both ends kind of, and it's often quite quite transparent that it is not love that makes that push, but rather
Yeah.
it is hatred for certain kind of things, right?
Yeah. That's very interesting how you mentioned. I do agree with you that on one hand you could have let's say the super progressives who won't agree with some of the church teachings and the church needs to change and we sort of go in this direction. And on the other hand, you have denial of certain councils and so forth because they're too progressive, and so then you
Mm-hmm.
go the other way. So in that sense, I do see that they're similar, where they pick and choose um, what what to believe and what to reject in the church. And for me, that's very dangerous. Because once that door is opened, once you say, "Look, oh, I'm gonna be the judge on what I deem is proper,"
Mm-hmm.
where do you stop? Because then the next person says, "Oh, yeah, that's not like you were saying." There's different levels of how far you go,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and so yeah. So I see it sort of more in that sense. It's a pretty clear litmus test. Is it in the church teaching, um, and I personally don't know enough to, in some sense, to make those decisions. So I have faith in the magisterium, and I say, what's put forward by the church is what I believe in. I obviously try to understand it. It's not just, and I think that goes back to what you said earlier in the video, where you were saying, look, you don't need to understand the deep theological implications of the liturgy in order to participate in it.
So what's important here is the definition of the word understanding, because I would argue that if when we participate in the liturgy, we understand it.
Yeah.
We don't have the explicit, the explicit knowledge that we could name it. But yeah, but that's the thing. We understand symbolism without knowing about it most of the time. And
yeah, I think
what is important. Yeah. What is important here regarding this issue is the pattern of the inverted love, let's say, where hatred seems to be working similar to love by connecting people, but eventually, when love is this glue that glues together things that shouldn't be glued together, like a mortal human with an immortal God, let's say. Hatred seems to be taking apart things that should be connected. For example, either the progressive end of the spectrum in the church, or the over traditionalized, I'd say, where you should, like, for example, the FSSPX should recognize FSSP as brothers, but they probably hate FSSP more than any other progressives, right?
Yeah.
Because they deem them as traitors, let's say.
Yeah.
But I think that this is the pattern of inverted hierarchy, of inverted love, which takes brother apart from brother. The same is with, for example, the Russian Orthodox Church, that has the most. For example, in Russia, you can be a Catholic, but you cannot be Eastern Catholic. You cannot be Byzantine.
It's too close, for comfort.
Yeah. So it's too close, and we need to put a border there that is explicit.
Yeah, maybe because when things are close, but when things are closer, they encroach on your boundary. Whereas if it's explicitly different from you, you don't need to make that distinction, because the progressives are on the other side. They're so far away from us, nobody's going to confuse us. But if somebody, I mean, I don't know if this rivalry exists, but you can imagine that it does. That they're so close, but they don't go all the way. So maybe that's also part of it.
I think that's definitely true, and I think this is how, for example, countries are formed. Like, no one hates the Swedes as much as the Danes, right?
Yeah, that's a good.
And no one hates the French as much as the Germans.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
It's the old saying: familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's a good point you mentioned, that you participate in the liturgy and you understand it, because I've been thinking about this in the Bible. Knowing something, it says Adam knew his wife. That's obviously it's about sexual union, and so the fact that the idea that knowledge and participation, you can say, is seems to overlap in the Bible. And so for me, that's a little bit of a, it's not how we think today. We not just talking about sort of relations between man and woman, but participation and knowledge in general.
Well, that's why I think, in a way, that when you have a solid grounding in faith, and you participate in the liturgy, you don't need explicit knowledge about symbolism. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's fine to, if you're interested, it's fine to treat it as a hobby.
Yeah.
But if you lead a regular life, then everything is connected in you, right? Everything
Mm-hmm.
is properly connected. It's only when there's a disconnect that you need this. So yeah, if you participate, you know about the stuff you participate in. Like it's obvious to you,
Mm-hmm.
even though you cannot put it into words.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious to you.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to debate someone. Like if someone challenges you,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be able to debate them. But it is obvious for you, right?
Yeah.
Because participation breeds knowledge, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I understand it, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to you're also saying, it's fine um, to have that level of yeah knowledge participation, um, until things go wrong or you're challenged. And
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely in more of the modern, for example, if you look at the church architecture, right, and maybe this is more prevalent, it's less prevalent in Europe because there are these old churches and cathedrals that are so beautifully laid out, and the architecture just matches up with the what it's trying to express. But so in, let's say, the new world, and modern churches, especially Catholic churches, they really just look uh, like a hall, and they've just like lost a lot of the sense, a lot of the architecture that was there. It's not just beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful, but it's not just that. It speaks to a deeper truth. And I think so when you become aware of that, and then you go to this modern church, it feels, um, yeah, you begin to notice how the orientation is not right, and um, and like I wonder if the average sort of churchgoer who doesn't know about that, um, yeah, if they are sort of settling for something not as engaging, or maybe that affects their participation as well, and then
Mm-hmm.
to the knowledge, so it's all kind of connected.
So I have a friend who is an architect, um, and she said that like the basics for architectural design is the golden ratio, like in
Mm-hmm.
any other field.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me that when you design according to the golden ratio, people like the things that they see and like the place they are at, but they cannot tell why.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what's going on with the church. And here is a strong point for the traditionalists, that there seems to be a disconnect with the church architecture and the church art in general.
Mm-hmm.
A discontinuity in a way. Like you could see a breakdown, like the all of the 2000 years of tradition has been broken away from in the architecture of the modern churches, because before you had evolution with some summit,
Yeah.
and then there's just a we erase all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that strikes really close, because right now um I'm planning to start building in a house,
Mm-hmm.
and another friend, another architect, is helping me design the facade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy for me to look at the building and see that I like it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I try to replicate that on the house that I'm trying to design, it just doesn't work out, because you need this particular explicit knowledge here
Mm-hmm.
that he has that I
Mm-hmm.
don't. Like if I try to copy one building to that, it breaks down. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to know why and
Mm-hmm.
how to do those things, to
Sure.
notice, because you don't notice things.
Mm-hmm.
You think, okay, this is just a white line around the window,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't notice that it's thinner here and it's thicker here, and it's wider on the on the bottom. And why is this? Because in the ancient times it used to be stone, and it used to be built like that, and it resembled something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was this continuity throughout throughout millennia, even
Mm-hmm.
that the classical shape of a building that we have with all the ornaments can be traced back to the ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's after that there's a breakdown of the tradition. There's a complete disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
and you start a new kind of, which is, which can be seen as something unwise.
Yeah,
So to say.
that's true. Well, I think also technology allows you to do this sort of experimentation, whereas I guess in older times you had to sort of use these more primitive tools, and so
Yeah,
you were constrained in how crazy you could
yeah,
get, and so
yeah.
within that
That's for
framework
sure.
you come up with the although not saying that the proportions and forms I think are sort of eternal, like you're saying golden ratio. So no matter how much
Hmm.
technology you have, that ratio is not going to change. But it
Sure.
still allows, for wild expression and more ego from the part of the architect, maybe.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, and maybe even, you have the theology, which gets a little bit more wild, and that it reflects in the architecture. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think that is true. That is a point to the tradition. I mean, that's why I lean towards the tradition, because you say, look, there's this 2,000 years of development, and you
Hmm.
you shouldn't throw it away just because you can, like just because we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
now
yeah,
make a
yeah.
church which just looks
Just
like a
because you think
fish.
you're smarter than people before you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So I watch a lot of, you watch movies, and you realize that in times of hardship, and the character is going through some struggle. I mean, that's what makes the movie kind of interesting. But you hardly ever see like a prayer, or you know or the main character praying, turning to God. um, Whereas I think for a huge percentage of the world population, prayer and belief in God is a massive part of their lives. If we zoom out of the Western, just even the Western um, society. And so, um, yeah, I always wondered why, like that's not really a part um, of most movies. Most protagonists sort of just roll their sleeves up and they'll do it themselves. Is that sort of the human-centric uh, view? That we sort of like can you don't need an external help, that that yeah, like a humanist view, that ultimately we have to rise to the challenge.
Hmm. Have you ever tried writing something like a story or something like that?
Of just briefly short stories, yeah. Not much.
Because the thing is that I had a short period of writing really, really crappy poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed back then was that whenever I tried to be somewhat positive or hopeful in those poems, they came out really weak and unreadable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much easier to write like a depressive, no hope, etc. poem,
Mm-hmm.
and that ends bad or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like there seems to be a natural proneness in us to towards evil
Mm-hmm.
or towards bad things. And yeah, that might also be a part of the reason why all the Christian movies are so hard to watch, or at
Mm-hmm.
least most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Those explicitly Christian in a sense that they present,
Yeah.
that they try to present people praying, etc. And they
Mm-hmm.
are just feel like such tough propaganda and
Mm-hmm.
so unwatchable. Because it's hard. It's way, way harder to write about things that are, you know, higher,
Mm-hmm.
better.
Mm-hmm. Without it being cheesy or you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Without
superficial.
trying to be preachy or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Why that is hard to say. Maybe this is the feminine face of God,
Mm-hmm.
that he wants to stay hidden. He wants to stay
Mm-hmm.
secret and not part of our, popular media.
Yeah.
He wants to stay like between you and him in the prayer in the evening, and not necessarily be, you know, available for everyone at any time just by the click of
Mm.
play on Netflix.
It reminds. So one movie that came to my mind that actually, now that I think about it, does an excellent job of it is the. It's called A Hidden Life. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've seen that movie. It's based on a true story, actually of a guy in Austria who's blessed now. He's
Mm-hmm.
not a saint, but he
Yeah.
resisted the Nazis when they came to conscript,
Mhm.
and
I know of the movie. I
yeah,
It's still on my watch
yeah,
list.
yeah. No, it's very good. It's quite a good movie.
Mhm.
And that, but yeah. So the way that they show the prayer in that movie is again, they don't really show it. It's very it's a lot of silence, and you can just you have a feeling that that's what's going on, but they don't have like
Mhm.
monologues, or they don't have explicit vocal prayer
Mhm.
going on, but you understand that that's how the character is getting through this process, is by leaning on God. um,
Yeah.
yeah, but again, it's a very framed also as a very spiritual kind of movie, you know. It's so I guess in Avengers it would be hard to
Yeah.
have
Exactly.
Captain
It's
America
it, it's
pull out his rosary or something.
yeah. It's so funny because they say that the number one rule of storytelling is show, don't tell.
Mm,
But actually, then the next step is even don't show, right?
mm,
Don't
mm.
even show.
Yeah, just hint
Make
at.
it just hint at things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And also, like, we live. So it's again the question of what comes first, the propaganda or the effect of that propaganda. But it's in symbolism, it goes both ways, and it's always together.
Mm,
Like when we live in a culture that we live in, when you start thinking about writing a story that involves some religious sisters, that involves some nuns,
mm-hmm,
the image that comes to your mind immediately is rather of that strict monster of a woman type than
mm,
a loving, caring
mm-hmm,
nun that you know from real life. Because this is the type of media that you've already consumed, and you always, like, when you write a story, a new story, you always build up on the stories that you've already
mm,
consumed in a way. So it's way easier to like come up with the generic, super strict, not really godly sister than
mm-hmm.
than the you know
Yeah.
a proper nun that you probably know.
Mm. Yeah, but so yeah, it seems to me that it's like you said, it's difficult um, to portray the feminine side given the hiddenness, but then that applies also now, I guess, to prayer, like we're saying, to
Hmm.
the relation between
Yeah, of course.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, maybe we don't need Christian media or Catholic media.
mm,
Maybe we have to evangelize face to face, right?
mm,
So that people have a connection to reality,
mm,
rather than being evangelized just over the screen where all the sin comes from.
mm-hmm,
It's so strange when you have a browser open and one tab is I don't know, Gregorian chant, and the other tab is some porn site, right?
yeah.
Like you can just click, 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 click,
It's
click,
all
and
the yeah.
it just
That's true.
it's all
It's
the chaos.
mm,
That's the Tower of Babel that
mm,
that you also had in your notes, the Tower of Babel. So when they were expecting the internet to make
mm,
people flourish because we will have access to all the information, so now we can learn
yeah.
so many more things. But it's the flood of information.
It's turned
It's
out to
just
be a
everything.
dumpster
Yeah.
fire. It's like it's crazy, you know, this idea
Hmm.
that And you can see it. I mean, it makes sense. The internet will bring everybody together. It'll increase communication. We can all sort of collaborate and have these things and and then you cut to the reality, and it's like,
Yeah.
apart from the memes and the porn, it's just like hate and misinformation. And now that you have AI making fake videos, you can't even trust like things that you even see and hear. They can modify, and so it's just become a complete chaotic kind of thing that's divided people. It's had the opposite effect of what was intended in some way.
Yeah. And you can see, you can find, arguments for each stance that you could possibly take.
Mm.
Should you eat meat or should you not eat meat? You can find enough evidence and enough opinions on both sides that it's impossible for you to take a decision based on the evidence that you found.
Mm.
You always have to revert into something else,
Yeah.
because well, the internet won't give you answers, because it will give you both answers or all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this whole idea of like your truth, my truth. The internet is
Yeah,
perfect for that, because,
Mm.
and also the way the algorithms work. I mean, I'm not immune to it, so my YouTube feed and it reflects my worldview exactly. And if it doesn't, oh, don't recommend this channel. And so I teach
Yeah.
I teach it like, this is not what I want. And so then I go and I say, oh, look, everybody agrees with me. And then I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, sure.
Little do I know that if I log into somebody else's YouTube, I'll be like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is
Totally.
not YouTube.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's some other side. Yeah, that's a different side.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to to end it. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for your time. Sorry for the technical interruption, but
Sure, no problem.
it was
It
very interesting.
happens.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you,
look,
Harry. Thank you for reaching out and organizing all that.
sure thing.
It was a
Um,
pleasure.
yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, and I hope your channel develops fast and that it becomes popular, really.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for me,
I wish
it's
you all the best with that.
okay. Thank you. I mean, for me, it's also a way to formulate, the things that we're thinking about, and conversations like
Mm.
this is great. If someone finds it interesting, that would be a bonus. So thanks, guys, for watching, and thanks to Cuba again for making it happen. And I'll catch you next time.